I'm Frederik Banke and I teach programmers a better process. If you're looking for tips on how to write better code, you'll love this video. Keep watching. In this video, I'm going to teach you 3 tips on how to make your failing unit tests much easier to understand. Often when a unit test breaks, it's not immediately obvious why it broke. In many cases, you'll just end up standing there scratching your head, not understanding why the test broke in the first place and how could it even have been passing. So the question ends up being, is the test wrong and thus should be deleted? Or is it actually alright, but it's my understanding of the test that's just totally off? There are easy ways to improve the situation, and the best part is that it's going to require minimal effort to change your process. When you're doing TDD, one of the first things that you do is write a failing test. But how often are you actually testing that your test fails before you start implementing the production code? There are 2 reasons why you want to see your test fail and turn red before you start writing any production code. The first reason is that is how you test the test. Since test cases doesn't have tests themselves, we need some other way to verify that they function as we are expecting them to function. And the best way to do that is to run them and see that they turn red, because that signals that the behavior that we're testing is not yet implemented in our production code. The second reason why we want to see the test fail is that by failing the test we can see which message it is actually displaying to us when the test fails, and that allows us to evaluate how good or bad that message is and allows us to do something to improve it. In many cases, I see people go directly to writing production code as soon as they see the test case turn red, without putting any attention to if the communication of the error message from the failing test is actually useful. Instead, we want to focus our attention on making sure that the error message communicates why the test failed, and not just that it failed, before we move forward. In the following 2 tips, we're going to look at how to do that in practice. Goken syntax originates from behavior-driven development. The purpose of the syntax is to describe behaviors, and behaviors is exactly what we need to have a structured approach to communicating the intent of our test. Gherkin uses a few keywords, like given, when, then, and they're used to describe a behavior or a scenario. When we write a sentence in this structure, it's really difficult not to describe a behavior, because the sentence becomes really strange otherwise. So that structure helps us communicate our intent in a better way. I use this syntax when I write the names of my tests, and I do that because then the actual sentence will show up in my test runner. So when a test fails, just reading the name of the test will explain to me why the test was written in the first place, without me actually having to understand the content of the test. If a test fails with the message that it was expecting false but something was true, that communicates nothing. You'll need to go back, read the code and understand it to understand why something was actually not false when it was supposed to be false. Another way to communicate why an assertion failed is to add a descriptive message. The more descriptive we can make the message, the easier it will be for our future self to understand why this failure happened. Adding messages to assertions is a surprisingly controversial subject. I use XUnit as my testing framework, and they have chosen not to have messages available in all their assertions, and that's by design. Their reason for doing this is that they prefer clear code over comments, so they see a message as a comment, and they would rather have people focusing on making the intent of the test more clear through the actual code in the test. I get the argument why we want to have clear code instead of focusing on comments, but I still prefer that I have the ability to add a message, because the message will allow me to communicate something that is not easily read as part of the code. So since XUnit doesn't provide me with the ability to add messages to all my assertions, I use Fluent Assertion instead, because they do have this support. To sum up, improving failure messages can be done in a lot of ways. The key point here is that the better we can make the failure message communicate why the failure happened, the easier we will have when we see the test fail in the future. Just by putting a bit more effort into the red state of TDD, you will find ways to improve how your tests communicate failure. No matter if that's through Gherkin syntax or by having better messages. Okay, that's it for tips on how to improve the failure messages of your unit tests. I hope this video will allow you to create better tests in the future. If you learned something new from this video, make sure you follow me on LinkedIn for more tips on how to improve your coding process. Now it's your turn. Which tips are you going to implement in your own code? Is it just putting more focus on the red part of TDD, or maybe use Gherkin syntax? Leave a comment below.